Hey everyone, let's talk a little bit about first aid. Now, this is a quick prepper tip. It won't be exhaustive, but I really want to cover two things here. And the first is this: do you have a first aid kit? Now, a lot of us have first aid supplies at home. Some people even have like a first aid closet. We've talked a lot about that in the past. Things that you should be stockpiling, things that are important. First aid supplies go very, very quickly if there was really an emergency. And so you need to have a lot of it. But do you have a first aid kit that's easily accessible to you right now? So for instance, in your vehicle, in my truck, I have a first aid kit that I can get to. Actually, I have two because I purchased one from a podcaster years ago just to kind of support what they were doing. So I actually have two in here. But I have one in here and it has served me well in the past. I also have one at work in my desk, and that has served me well as well. You know, some of you work in businesses where you have like a big first aid cabinet, and that, you know, people go to it and they take care of it, and they can get whatever they need. But where I'm at, I mean, we don't have a first aid cabinet. And so people have come to me because they know that I'm prepared. And so they'll come and they're like, "Hey Todd, do you have a Band-Aid?" And sure enough, you know, I'm like, "Here you go." And so that's one of those things that I think it's important. You know, when we think about everyday carry and stuff like that, I've really changed the way that I've looked at everyday carry throughout the years. In the past, I had your traditional everyday carry, what you would do for survival, like, or at least what everybody said you should have for survival. And I had that in my backpack. I carried it around. It wasn't extremely heavy, but it added to the weight of my backpack. And I carry around my laptop, and a lot of the times I have maybe a tablet with me as well. And so it just added to the weight of everything. And I realized, man, I've never gotten into this thing before. I've never had to use my fire still. I've never had to use any of the, you know, fire making equipment. Not that that's bad to carry, and if really you got to look at your situation. Anyway, that's a whole nother everyday carry video or, you know, topic that we can talk about. But I've really changed even my everyday carry with what I look at first aid. So I wrote an article a while back on the Boo Boo kit, you know, made out of Altoids. And I still actually have that one. I don't carry it around with me anymore, but I still have it, and I have it actually in my desk. So it's like an extra, you know, mini first aid kit. But I've gotten to the point to look at what is important for me to have, you know, on an everyday basis. What kinds of things do I use? One of the things that I use is, and you know, I've talked about this before in the past, is sinus medicine, because allergies are terrible right now. Actually, allergies are terrible for me all the time. And right now it's crazy. So I get into it. My wife bought me this little thing, and I'm sitting in a little bit of traffic here, so I'm going to go ahead and look at the camera, but it's this little thing here, little pill, a pill keeper, I don't know what you call it, a container, but these screw off. So it has three different areas that screw off here. And I have some where I keep sinus medicine, sinus pressure medicine, have some where I keep ibuprofen, and some where I keep stuff for like heartburn and reflux, which I haven't had in a long time. And so I haven't had to use that one. This comes on a keychain, but I don't put it on my keychain. I just have it in my bag. And so it sits there, and this has served me really, really well. I use this on a regular basis, and I can easily refill it if I need to. The other thing is, I said that, you know, that little Boo Boo kit, that little Altoids kit, and it doesn't have a big profile, but I did go ahead and switch that out for something that I received at an event where we had a bunch of different people were kind of set up, and vendors and stuff, and they even had first responders there. And so they had some first responders that were giving out these little first aid kits that are like in an envelope. And so I picked one up, and it's really thin, and it has like Band-Aids in here. It has like if you got stung, insect bites. It has some alcohol swabs. It has some triple antibiotic ointment. And to be honest, those are all the things that I have used in the past. And so I'm like, it just makes a lot of sense to be able to just kind of keep this little flat thing in my backpack for someone who just doesn't like to carry around a lot of junk, And so I think that is one of those things that was important for me. So do you have first aid kits? Do you have first aid kits around you? And you don't have to have the really expensive ones. I have several. I have like 3 different versions and layers of first aid kits. Thankful to Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy for their instruction, for the ones that they sell as well. But the basic ones that I have at home in my office desk and in my truck are just little basic ones. So that's the first thing, right? The second thing is this: how often do you check your first aid kits to refill them when you use them, or just check them to make sure that everything is working correctly? So let me give you just a real world example for me. A couple of years back, I'm riding in my new vehicle, my new truck. Actually, so it's many years ago, not a couple of years back. My dad gave me his truck, and so he used it for his pull business. But then he was driving around a lot. It was a 6-cylinder, so he wanted a little 4-cylinder so that he could, save on gas. So he gave me the truck. He knew I wanted a vehicle, and so he gave me his vehicle, and I used it. And he had a first aid kit underneath the seat. So I took my son to the local school, and we were playing basketball on their blacktop. And I can't remember why he needed, I can't remember if he fell or whatever, he needed a Band-Aid. And so I'm like, let's go to the truck, there's a first aid kit underneath the seat. So we go, and I hadn't looked at this first aid kit in many, many years. And when we opened it up, it was like, it was old. I mean, everything was pretty much intact, but it was old. So the triple antibiotic ointment, I don't know how old that was. I still used it. The swabs to kind of clean up, the area were dry. So the alcohol swabs were kind of dry, and so those weren't really effective. We had some water. It's actually better to use just water and soap. But anyway, we used that, the triple antibiotic ointment, and then the Band-Aids weren't sticky anymore. That's how old these were. And a lot of it probably had to do with being in Houston and the heat of summer, and that just deteriorates everything in your vehicle. But it had been years before someone had got into it. And so I was looking at all that stuff. Well, I finally found some tape to be able to wrap around the Band-Aid just to kind of hold us over until we got home. But it just opened up my eyes to, I'm like, this first aid kit, I need to look at what's valuable, what I can keep, and throw the rest away and just get a new one. So my second tip here is how often do you look at your first aid kits and refill them? Especially if more than one person is getting into it. You can have family members getting into and getting medicine, or getting bandages, or getting Band-Aids, and then when you think it's a full first aid kit, and it's not. So you need to look at that every so often to make sure that it is filled and ready to go, and so it meets your needs. So those 2 tips right there. Do you have a first aid kit that is readily available? And again, I think like Walmart has the little small ones that you can throw in your vehicle or keep it in your desk for like $10. And Amazon has them as well. I'll link to them in the description if you're interested in looking at them on Amazon. But I think they're definitely worth it to have some of those. And you might even want to beef it up a little bit. There might be some things you might want to take out. There's like, okay, this is junk, but maybe there's some other things you might want to beef it up with. Now, that's not to say that, you shouldn't have other first aid equipment. I have like an Israeli bandage that I can get to very easily in my here in my truck. But I think those basic first aid kits, I'm going back to the things that I just really use on a regular basis. I think, you know, those are valuable. And so, do you have one? First thing is, do you have one? Excuse me, do you have one? And then second thing is, do you check it out? Do you make sure that everything is still usable, or do you need to refill it? All right, guys, that's it for this prepper tip. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this one. We'll talk to you soon.